Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, please shine down on me.
I didn't know everything that being a single mom entailed. Having to figure out how to afford childcare, how to work full-time, how to, just balance life.
We met. A year later, I proposed to him. And then a month after that, he enlisted in the military. And then 2 weeks after that, we bought the house. And then we found out we were pregnant. And it was like bam, 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 bam. And it didn't stop.
Yeah, it still hasn't stopped.
Bubblegum in a dish. How many pieces?
I have 3 kids. They're all under the age of 8. So I work 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
Experts say energy bills shouldn't exceed 6% of income.
Okay, you guys ready?
Most Americans spend 3.5%, but for many, that number is more like 20 to 50%.
It's due on the 3rd.
Approximately 30% of our income go towards our energy bill.
Inefficient heating and cooling, lack of weatherization, and older appliances add to the burden.
In 20 days, I'll be out of a job.
I'm scared of how we're going to support a family of 4. This is a new one.
I would say rent, utilities, and food.
Well, I think the 4th expense would be kids.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Towards the end of my pregnancy, I lost my job, so I had no income. So I'm in an energy assistance program.
There you go.
It's still hard to afford, but it's made it a lot more affordable than if I wasn't in the program.
Ready to go outside, Bodhi? My biggest fear when it comes to getting our energy bill that might be outrageous is how will we be able to afford it? We just have to take money maybe out of groceries and then allocate that towards our bills.
Being in a basement-style apartment, I found out that the insulation here isn't that great, so I'll put towels up against the windows and under the doors just to make sure it stays insulated in here.
Thank you, Dad.
There's days it's colder inside than it is outside.
Big kisses.
The success that everybody around you has, you want that too, but the struggle is real, like, we have it hard.
This year, Nest is launching a 5-year commitment to lighten the energy burden. By working with partners to make 1 million energy and money-saving smart thermostats available to homes in need, and every new Habitat for Humanity home built in the U.S. this year. And by raising awareness, matching donations, and providing relief. So that every family can have light in the dark and heat in the cold. Learn about the energy burden in your neighborhood at nest.com/powerproject.
Hello and welcome to this week's show. One of the most often asked questions of me is about a CRM. Which is the best CRM to use? Well, I've just learned that it's the wrong question to ask. So what is the right question you should be asking? Sarah Bell from Aire joins me. Hi, Sarah. Good to be talking to you again.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. So what is the right question that we should be asking about a CRM?
Yeah, so look, what is the purpose of a CRM? What am I trying to achieve? And
build a relationship, I guess.
Yeah, so the CRM, the purpose of the CRM is to host relationship data. So some of the mistakes that we often see agents making is that they, instead of using CRM as a warehouse for relationships, they instead, use it as a property database. So they'll import a bunch of property ownership information that doesn't have a relationship attached to it. And that just tends to confuse the issue and creates a lot of noise around the purpose of a CRM and exactly the work that you should be doing with it.
So when you look at data in a CRM, can you tell straight away whether it's being used properly or built properly?
So there's a lot of granular detail that goes into analyzing a CRM, and it's why we don't do it manually anymore. We kind of let Rita do the analysis and then give us some insights to interpret. So there are some pretty clear diagnostics that come out of that interrogation of the CRM that help us diagnose the health of the data set, the quality of it, and how the humans of the business are interacting with the humans that exist in their community. That speaks to the actual essence of the relationship.
So in reality, the CRM or the data collection point sits between the two humans, if I could sort of explain it that way, and that's a measure of how that relationship's going. Does it give you indications about how it could be accelerated or whether it's healthy?
Yeah, it does. So some of the insights that Rita can produce is that she'll look at giving us a net measurement of new data that's added to the CRM that has a property ownership record attached to it. And so when we look at the health or the viability of a data asset, the proportion of property ownership detail that's attached to a contact, so that we build that connection between the owner of the property itself, and the history of service from the agent or the business. That sort of triangulation of data starts to look like the foundation of a relationship that will lead to a deal.
Because real estate agents don't just sell houses. I mean, the house is the byproduct. It's really the strength of the relationship between the seller and the buyer, and the agent sitting in the middle of all of that. That's
exactly right. It's probably before I met my real estate husband, I thought the real estate agents sold houses, and that's what I thought they did.
Well, actually, a lot of real estate agents still believe that.
And I guess in observing him work and then being abducted into the real estate industry for such a long time myself, what I came to learn pretty quickly is that real estate agents actually sell their professional service and advice to people who have properties. And so in order to sell your professional advice to people who have properties, you need to know who are the people who have properties. And what that looks like in a CRM is a very clear connection between a property asset and a contact in terms of an ownership data collection.
I've heard you speak about within databases that there are some relationships that are agent-led and some that are brand-led. Could you talk about that for a moment, explain the difference?
Yeah, so we talk about this when we're talking about the distribution of data in an office. And, I think possibly a distracting conversation about who owns data has been dominating the narrative. And from what we see and the low levels of engagement between humans in a business and humans in the data set, it doesn't really matter because no one's doing anything with it. So the view that we take, or the view that we've formed, is that the assignment of an individual in the business to a piece of data as the first point of contact is an assignment of responsibility. It's an accountability. So when you are an agent, you have accountability for the contacts or the relationships in the data set to ensure that you are the brand representative that holds that relationship and is the one providing the service for which there is a fee when there is an eventual sale.
Because let's face it, no one owns the data. No one owns the relationship necessarily. I mean, that one person could have a relationship with 3 or 4 different agents. So in other words, owning some data in an office is meaningless, really.
Yeah, and it's kind of, that there's a few issues that you brought up just then. So duplication is an issue where you've got multiple contacts in the database multiple times assigned to multiple agents, and it can be an excuse not to call because you think that the data's dirty or that people from the business are going to, be calling over the top of each other, sort of thing. But the reality is it's quite conceivable that a person, a property owner from the property owner community might have different relationships from within the business. So I might have a relationship with the principal of the business, and I might have a relationship with a BDM with regards to my investment property, and both my principal place of residence and my investment property might be suburbs that are the territorial niche of 2 different individual sales agents. So it could be that I'm replicated in a database 4 times, and that's a metric that kind of gives most data administrators a bit of a panic attack. But in terms of when we look at the unit of data, isn't actually the contact record, it's actually the relationship. It's conceivable that that relationship might be truly duplicated in a multiple of different ways across the business, so the duplication's okay in that scenario.
Because I guess it must be very frustrating for a consumer as well, if you think about it for a moment, with a CRM collection of data. There's a possibility that a person could be entered into several different sections of that CRM system, which is, I've heard you refer to it as silo or several silos. That could be very frustrating for someone, couldn't it? Because they really see it as just one relationship.
Well, perhaps they do and perhaps they don't, but it only becomes a problem when you have generic communication. So if someone receives the same bulk email that's not personalised to them in any way 5 times because they're in the data set 5 times, then yes, it can be incredibly frustrating because there's no single source of truth. However, when you look at the relationship, it's quite conceivable that I might want to hear from the inner city Brisbane expert about my principal place of residence, and yet I might want to deal with a Brisbane Southside expert when it comes to my investment property, because both of those niche markets require very complex, sophisticated knowledge that changes street by street in some instances. So it might be that those two relationships are distinguished, and as long as the information is personalised to my property, to me, and to the degree or the level of relationship that I have with those two people, the duplication's not necessarily an issue. But regardless of whether you have, a fully open data set or you have agents working in a closed database, it's important that there is the capability to share. Now that's either, when you have a closed database, it just means that it's gated and that there's some kind of human oversight into the sharing of knowledge or sharing of data. When it's fully open, it's a bit of a free-for-all, and there's no system's perfect. There's cultural issues within a real estate business that are at play there. If you look at a fully open, no one owns any contact. It's all, everyone can see everything. I've seen that go really, really wrong, because if everyone's accountable for a relationship, then no one's accountable at the same time. And we can't kind of ensure service levels if no one has the ultimate or primary responsibility for that relationship on behalf of the brand.
I've heard some agencies and agents talk about the size of their database. We've got 20,000 people on our database. How do you measure the success or the profitability or potential from a database? Is it about size?
It's not. It's about quality of relationship. So one of the things.
How do you measure that?
Yeah, we measure that. We do this really interesting analysis where we have Rita constantly monitoring the market, and for every new listing that comes on the market, she seeks to find if there's a match in the address. And there's a table that I've given to you, Kevin, that will show you what 1 week of one suburb looks like in that.
We'll just bring that graphic up now. Could you just tell us what we can see there?
Yeah, so this is actually it's about 3 weeks of data for one suburb for one agency, not one agency, the brand, just an agency.
Yes.
And so what we're looking at, good market, bad market, it doesn't really matter. What we're looking at is that in that time period, there were 46 listings come on the market with an agent. Okay. Yep. Which gives us a total addressable market, or the total available commission of that was over $500,000, $560,000. Now, this particular agency, their share of that business was 3 listings, which is valued at about $36,000. But what's quite interesting is that Rita found that in 8 instances, there were properties listed with competitors that matched data that existed in the CRM.
So in other words, there are 8 people of those 46 who the agency had contact with? Is that?
Not necessarily contact with, but they had the opportunity to contact them because they had some address data matched matched to a contact.
Okay.
So in that scenario, it's either that the data is out of date. So we say it's an opportunity to update the data. You can either archive the contact or you can ring them and say, your old place is on the market. Where do you live now? Or it's that we appraised the property and,
see.
we have divided it and we lost it fair and square,
Yes.
which is fine. But we need to understand that there's a cost to that. That's not market dependent. And that there's often quite a large proportion that, have come on the market with a competitor that we can see no one from the agency has been in contact with them outside of a broadcast generic marketing message for a very long time.
What about, so no data? I mean, that represents about 50% of all of the listings we're talking about there.
Yeah, so in this particular market, it's in hindsight, it's possibly not the best example. In this particular market, there was a big development unleashed that week.
Oh, okay, right.
2 lots with no address, so that there was no capability of matching those. But the no address, the no address advertised was 13 of those that didn't have an address, so we couldn't match them. But the no data means that probably outlines the opportunity that exists.
That's what I would have thought.
To acquire more property ownership data. You're exactly right. So even you can focus on the 8 lost, which is probably a negative approach to take. We suggest that they're all learning opportunities. But in terms of building a data asset, if those 22 people who came onto the market were in the database, we would at least have had an opportunity for over $250,000 of commission. And we're just looking at a couple of week period here.
Okay, let me just ask you a couple of really dumb questions now on this graphic here. We've won 3, we lost 8, so I can reasonably assume we should have picked up 11 if all things being equal. Is that right?
No one's got 100%.
No, I know. But just stay with me. I'm just trying to understand this myself. So if there were 11 and we secured 3, that means we're getting roughly 25%. Is that correct?
Of the opportunity.
Of the opportunities. If we were to have collected data on the other 22, given our existing skill level, you'd have to say we would have picked up another 5 listings.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 things here. One, that's the lost opportunity, but also we've got an enormous ability to build our skill. So where are we going wrong? So there's a lot we can draw out of just that one comparison.
Yeah, and look, we drill down further analysis for our clients, and with those lost opportunities, we want to ask the question, why did we lose them?
Yes.
And sometimes it is that we did appraise it and we lost it fair and square, that vendors wanted too much, or someone did it for 0.5% commission, or whatever it is. And that's okay, because they're kind of uncontrollable losses. But where you see we drill down in great granular detail on those lost opportunities, where you see that it was someone in the CRM that still owns the property. And sometimes we see CRM categories that say things like hot seller pipeline A, that indicates that they are, that at some point they were identified as a strong prospect of sale, and yet it's been 6 months, 12 months. But since somebody actually
has reached out to them or had a conversation,
about their situation. So,
that is a great demonstration of you can't improve anything you don't measure, and this is a classic example of measuring something and then analysing the data and saying, okay, well, how can we improve on this? It's not a matter of we've made mistakes or we haven't done well. This is an opportunity for us to improve our skill level. So it's all about measuring.
And that's it. And I think, this gives us kind of a real-time listing share of the market, and we get so caught up in the good market, bad market, kind
excuses.
Or sentiment. But the reality is that in a couple of week period, in one suburb, there was over $500,000 of opportunity that existed. And this office took a very small piece of the pie, 3 out of 46, when in fact, the only way to grow that piece of the pie is to know more people and ensure that we have that relationship management in place, so that those customers choose our services on the strength of that relationship.
Yeah. That's a fabulous way to end our chat too. It's been wonderful, Sarah Bell, of course, from Aire. And we've mentioned Rita on a few occasions, a good opportunity. There's a tremendous demonstration about the power of having something like Rita. If you want to know more about it, we'll make sure that there's a link below here to take you to Sarah and the team at Aire. Sarah, great talking to you, my friend. It's always very, very enlightening. And I love data. Sorry. I love data.
We'll accept both pronunciations. I flick between the two.
Yeah, but you're right. It is data because there's no R in data. Sarah Bell, thank you so much for your time. Great talking to you.
Thanks, Kevin.